Studying to become a doctor is really hard work, but I scored 100% at my autopsy exam on Friday. I can't take all the credit though. My roommate was a huge help. I wish I could thank him, but he's no longer with us. R.I.P. Jacob. According to the legend, if you look into a mirror and chant the name Candyman 5 times, he will appear behind you and kill you with his hook. For you see, the Candyman is a vicious killer with a bloody hook for a hand. He appears from the mirror covered in blood and bees, and he has nothing but murder on his mind. They say that many years ago, the Candyman was a real man. Back in the days of slavery, Candyman was a black slave named Daniel Robbie Talley, who worked on a plantation in New Orleans. He was a talented painter and was chosen by the plantation owner to paint a portrait of his daughter. But Daniel fell in love with the daughter of the white plantation owner. When the racist plantation owner discovered that his daughter and the slave were in love, he raised an angry mob and chased Daniel out of town. Armed with pitchforks and a pack of dogs, they chased the poor slave across fields and streams. Finally, they caught up with the exhausted slave near an old barn. The evil men seized Daniel and cut off his right hand with a rusty saw. Then they covered him in honey and threw him into a beehive. The unfortunate Candyman was in terrible pain and died from his injuries. But not before he cursed the men who killed him and vowed to return and exact his revenge. They say his spirit would never rest, and now his ghost walks the world for all eternity, appearing when his name is called 5 times. So remember, you can say Candyman once, twice, thrice, or 4 times, but never say it 5 times, or you'll be sorry. One day, a young married couple was hiking in the mountains. As the sun began to set, they realized that they were lost. The wife was getting worried, but her husband tried to calm her down and assured her that they would eventually find their way back to their car. However, after walking for hours, they still had no idea where they were. It was growing dark, and the man and wife were getting desperate. They didn't have a map or a compass with them, and all the trees looked the same. Just when they were about to give up hope, they came across an old cabin in the clearing. The cabin looked as if it had seen better days. It was dilapidated and seemed like it hadn't been used in a long time. Some of the windows were cracked and broken, and a lot of the tiles had fallen off the roof. The husband knocked on the front door, but there was no response. When he turned the handle, it slowly creaked open. Inside, they found it was in bad state of disrepair. There was very little furniture, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. As the couple cautiously looked around, they noticed a strange atmosphere and a particular musty smell. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with graffiti, written in red paint. The words, "Death, death, 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 death," were repeated over and over again. The man and woman were unnerved. With a shaking hand, the husband reached out to touch the wall. He was horrified to find that the paint was not yet dry. The couple were very frightened, but they had nowhere else to go. They knew that the mountains were dangerous at night, and there were still lots of wild animals prowling the woods. Despite the creepy writing on the walls, they decided to stay the night. Going upstairs, they found a moth-eaten mattress that was covered in stains. The husband and wife wrapped themselves in an old piece of carpet to keep warm, and tried to make themselves as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. They lay down together on the mattress and eventually managed to fall asleep. Sometime after midnight, The couple were awakened by a strange rustling noise. It sounded like someone, or something, was moving around outside the shack. "Did you hear that?" asked his wife. "I think there's somebody out there." Her husband listened for a while, but he didn't hear anything. He got out of bed and walked over to the window. It was too dark outside to see anything. Opening the window, he stuck his head out. "Who's there?" he called nervously. There was no answer. He was about to go back to bed when his wife said, "Maybe it's someone who can't speak." The husband returned to the window and said, "Is there anybody out there?" Clap once for yes and twice for no. He strained his ears to listen. The stars twinkled in the night sky. The crickets were chirping loudly. All of a sudden, he heard a loud. The man turned to his wife and said in surprise, "You were right, there's someone out there." He leaned out the window and his eyes scanned the darkness. He couldn't make out anything in the pitch black. "Are you the owner of this cabin?" he asked. "Are you a man?" "You're a woman then." "Are you human?" A chill ran down his spine. He swallowed hard and croaked, "Did you come here alone?" "How many are with you?" Clap once for each person. Warning: these curses are real. They do not use black magic or voodoo, but rather ancient Japanese rituals. Do not use any of these curses. They are extremely dangerous. If something goes wrong, the curse could rebound on you, causing you to die instead. The act of placing a curse on someone else always has an effect on you. The curse always rebounds to some extent and affects you. You could become ill or mentally unstable. In extreme cases, you could even die. There is an old Japanese proverb that says when you place a curse on a person, you need 2 holes. This means that a curse will always rebound on you, so when you place a curse on someone else, you need to dig 2 graves, because you will die as well. Easy curse. To perform this ritual, you need a sheet of tissue paper and a ballpoint pen. 1. Smooth out the tissue paper and fold it in half, lengthwise. 2. With the ballpoint pen, draw the shape of a person on the tissue paper while imagining in your mind the person you want to curse. 3. Be careful not to tear the tissue paper while you are drawing. 4. Draw an X on the figure at any place, the head, the belly, or the feet. 5. Then, while imagining the person, stab with a ballpoint pen aimed at that part. 6. Keep stabbing it until it is gradually painted black. 7. When there is a hole drilled in the tissue, something may be happening. To finish the ritual, burn the tissue paper, sprinkle salt on the ashes, place them in an envelope, and throw it in the garbage. Note: do not let anyone see you stabbing the tissue paper. Do not let anyone see or touch the tissue paper after you have drawn on it. Curse of the 10 yen coin. This curse requires a Japanese 10 yen coin, a bottle, and the hair of the person you want to curse. In other countries, you can use a different coin. For example, in the US, you can use the dime, and in Europe, you can use the 10-cent euro coin. You can use a glass bottle or plastic bottle. 1. Place the hair of the person you want to curse, along with the 10 yen coin, in the plastic bottle and close the lid. 2. Bury the bottle outside, in the soil. This is a relatively easy method of curse, and it causes your enemy to suffer various disasters in succession. Curse of the kanji. Japanese characters are called kanji. You need to figure out how to write the first name of the person you want to curse in kanji. 1. Write the person's name on a piece of paper, all in kanji. 2. Beneath this, write the person's name again, but this time replace the first character in the name with the kanji for curse. 3. Keep doing this until all characters have been replaced with the kanji for curse. The person's name is now literally filled with curse. 4. Fill the rest of the paper with black or red ink. Note: be careful not to make any mistake when doing this, or the curse will rebound onto you. Curse of the raw egg. 1. Prepare a raw egg. 2. Write the full name of the person you want to curse on the egg. 3. Drill a hole in the egg. 4. Bury it in the soil and wait for it to rot. The curse will take effect in about a week. As the egg rots, the person will be afflicted by a mysterious illness. Caution: make sure you are not seen burying the egg, or the curse will rebound onto you. If you make any mistake during the ritual, the curse will also rebound onto you. Curse of the Pine Needles. To perform this ritual, you need 13 pine needles, 3 hairs from your own head, a metal container, and some salt. 1. Bind the 13 pine needles together using the 3 hairs. 2. Pour enough salt into the metal container to cover the bottom of it. 3. Place the bound pine needles on top of the salt and set them on fire. 4. While they are burning, repeat this chant. Where the 4 X's are is where you'll say the name of the person you want to curse. 5. Continue the chant until the fire burns out. Caution: this curse, if taken seriously, will have an incredibly powerful and heinous effect. The stronger the feeling of your grudge, the stronger the curse will work. Curse of the Broken Glass. 1. Go to the crossroads at midnight when the moon is not visible. 2. Make sure there is no one in the vicinity. 3. Drop a blue glass onto the crossroads so that it breaks. 4. Say in a low voice, XXXX is dead, where the 4 X's are is the name of the person you want to curse. This will instantly cause your enemy to die. Note: you need to be careful. If you touch the broken glass or cut yourself on the broken pieces, you will be affected by the curse instead. If you like this video, press the thumbs up button, also the subscribe button, and if you want, you can leave a comment down below, especially if you want to request what I read next. Man in the Elevator. There was a 19-year-old Korean girl named Haruko who was attending university in a large city. One night, she had to stay late in the library to finish a project, and it was almost dark by the time she returned home. Haruko lived on the 14th floor of an old apartment building. She stood in the entrance and pressed the button to call the elevator. She always hated coming home alone so late in the evening. It just didn't feel safe. When the elevator came, she stepped inside and pushed the buttons for her floor. Just as the doors were about to close, a handsome man came running up. The man was out of breath and put out his hand to stop the doors closing. Then, he stepped into the elevator and stood beside her. "You live on the 14th floor?" he asked, seeing the button lit up. "Yes," replied Haruko. "Ah," said the man, smiling. "I live on the 13th. As the elevator ascended, he pressed the button for 13. Through the windows in the elevator door, Haruko watched the floors go by. As they both stood in silence, she stole a few glances at the man. He was certainly handsome. She wondered if he would ever be interested in dating her. When he happened to look at her, she batted her eyelids and smiled sweetly at him. Just then, the elevator stopped at the 13th floor. The doors opened, and the man stepped out. "See you later," he said. "Yes, see ya," replied Haruko. As the doors of the elevator were closing behind him, the man suddenly turned around, pulling a sharp knife out of his jacket, and said in a menacing voice, "Upstairs." Then, laughing like a maniac, he ran towards the staircase. The girl was terrified, but before she could do a thing, the doors shut, the elevator began to ascend. She began to panic. Desperately, she hammered the buttons with her fist, trying to get the elevator to stop. but it was no use. When it reached the 14th floor, and the doors opened, the man with the knife was already standing there, waiting for her. In Korea, people say that this is a true story. The girl was found dead, stabbed to death in the elevator. People say that the worst part was not her death itself, but rather the sheer horror she experienced in between those two floors, when she was trapped in the elevator and knew she was going to die. They claim that this is the reason that all elevators have a stop button. My name is Tommy, and I think I might be going insane. I grew up in a normal, middle-class home with loving parents and a sweet little sister. Everything seemed fine, until one day when something very strange happened. I came home from school, and when I walked into the living room, I saw something that disturbed me. My mother and father were sitting on the couch, smiling, and staring at the TV. The weird thing was, the TV wasn't even on, yet they were staring at it intently. They both turned to look at me, and at the same time said, "Hello, Timmy." My heart leapt up into my throat. My name is Tommy. How could my own parents make a mistake like that? Is everything okay? I asked nervously. Everything is perfect, Timmy, my father replied. They were both smiling from ear to ear. It was creepy. I decided to go upstairs to talk to my little sister. When I walked into her room, she was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Have you noticed anything strange about Mum and Dad? I asked. She smiled at me and said, "No, Timmy, Mum and Dad are just perfect." My blood ran cold. My name is Tommy. Without another word, I backed out of the room. She was still smiling at me as I closed the door. I had no idea what to do. I couldn't shake the sneaking suspicion that there was something wrong with my entire family. I went into my bedroom and tried to think. I heard my mother coming up the stairs. She went into her bedroom and closed the door. I decided to spy on her, so I went into the hallway and peeked through her keyhole. What I saw terrified me. My mother was changing clothes. She was standing with her back to me, and I immediately noticed something very shocking. Her skin was pale, and there was a zipper that ran all the way down her back. Whatever she wasn't my mum. That's when the panic set in. I ran down the stairs and out the front door. As I was dashing down the driveway, I looked back and saw my father at the front door. He was on all fours, growling like an animal and chasing after me like a raging demon. Since then, I've been on the run. All I can do now is keep moving. Now that I know their secret, they can't afford to let me live. I kept moving from place to place, begging on the street for spare change. I tried to go to the police, but they wouldn't believe me. They said I was a runaway and tried to bring me back to my parents. I just narrowly managed to escape. I tried to go to the media, but every reporter I spoke to just laughed in my face. I'm tired of running. I'm pretty sure they killed my real family. My only reason for living now is to get revenge. Can anyone help me? My name is Timmy. Villyn here. I hope you guys like this video. Please leave a like, and subscribing doesn't hurt either. Comment down below for what you want me to narrate next. I'm open to requests. One night, I was visiting a friend of mine. I hadn't seen him in a long time. We had the following conversation. Friend: I like having you here. Me: yeah, it's been good to see you again. Friend: will you stay the night? You can sleep in the spare bedroom. Me: okay, why not? It'll be easier than walking home. Friend: kill some time here then. I like having company. It's so lonely here all on my own. Me: yeah, living alone can be tough. Friend: you look exhausted. You should probably go straight to bed and get some rest. Me: I guess I am feeling tired. Friend: in the morning, I'll have a lot of things to take care of. Sweet dreams. Me: okay, see you in the morning. Friend: your bed is already made. It's in the first room on the right. Just go to sleep. Me: good night. Friend: sleep tight. I went into the bedroom and closed the door behind me. As I thought about the conversation, I started shaking. I listened at the door as my friend walked down the hallway and went into his bedroom. I then opened the window, climbed out, and ran all the way home. Can anyone guess the riddle that is in this story? Thanks for watching. Leave a like and a comment, and subscribing won't kill you. The 4th floor. One evening, I was looking for an internet cafe because I needed to send a few emails. I spotted one in an old building. The sign said it was on the 6th floor. When I walked through the entrance, there was a dark hallway that led to a small elevator. I pressed the call button, and when the doors opened, I stepped inside. In a lot of Asian countries, many buildings do not have a 4th floor. The number 4 is considered bad luck because the word for 4 sounds almost the same as the word for death. The buttons in the elevator were 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. I pressed the button for the 6th floor. The doors closed, and the elevator quietly began to ascend. When it stopped and the doors opened, I was about to step out when I realized that something was wrong. The hallway was in total darkness. By the light emanating from the elevator, I could make out random pieces of furniture covered with white cloth. It looked like it hadn't been occupied for decades. I thought I must have gotten the wrong floor, so I checked the buttons, but none of them were lit up. There was nothing to indicate which floor I was on. Just then, I noticed something moving at the end of the darkened hallway. I couldn't quite make out what it was, but it looked like a person dressed in some type of gown. The figure was moving slowly down the hallway towards the elevator. It creeped me out, and in a panic, I started pressing the closed door button. All of a sudden, the light in the elevator flickered and turned off. I was plunged into pitch darkness. I was so freaked out, I almost wet myself. Just as I was about to lose it completely, the lights flickered and came back on. The doors closed. The elevator jolted back to life, began to ascend again. I breathed a sigh of relief. When the doors opened this time, I was at the internet cafe. I went over to the counter and told the girl who worked there what had happened. As she listened, her face grew pale. She said that some of the customers and a few of her co-workers had experienced something similar. She had never experienced anything herself, but she told me about the history of the building. Apparently, the 4th floor had a hair salon at one time. It was a prospering business until one of the women who worked there killed herself in the salon. Nobody knew the reason why, but she slit her wrists over a basin and bled to death. The salon continued to operate, but they were plagued by weird and inexplicable events. Sometimes, when customers were having their hair washed, the water would run as red as blood. Other people claimed that when they looked in the mirror, they would catch glimpses of a ghostly figure standing behind them. When they turned around, there would be no one there. Because of these events, the salon developed a bad reputation and began to lose customers. Eventually, they were forced to close. The building's owner tried to rent the 4th floor out to other businesses, but when they found out that someone had died there, nobody would take it. Finally, the owner reduced the price to nearly nothing, and it was rented by a businessman who planned to open a stationery supply store. However, when they tried to do some renovations on the floor, there was a series of mysterious accidents. The workmen's tools would sometimes disappear, only to be found in strange places. A large mirror suddenly shattered when no one was near it, and a workman had his hand crushed when the elevator doors closed on him unexpectedly. Eventually, the workman was spooked and refused to continue, and the businessman pulled out and left. The building's owner gave up trying to rent the 4th floor and just shut it down. He had the buttons in the elevator replaced, and it was reprogrammed so that nobody could go to the 4th floor. At least, that's what was supposed to happen. For some reason, when people would take the elevator, it would sometimes stop on the 4th floor, and when the doors opened, some people would see a figure coming towards them in the darkness. There was a woman who lived in a small house in the suburbs of a big city. She wasn't married and lived alone, with only her big dog to keep her company. The dog was a Doberman. One evening, the woman came home from work and found her dog choking on something. It was lying on the living room floor and gasping for air. The woman dropped her purse and tried to clear her dog's throat, but she had no luck. Concerned about the animal's welfare, She immediately loaded her pet into the car and drove him to the nearest vet's office. The vet examined the Doberman right away and said he would probably have to operate in order to remove the obstruction in the dog's windpipe. He told the woman to go home and he'd call her later to let her know how things went. Meanwhile, the dog was still gasping for air and growing weaker by the minute. The flustered woman went straight home. As she was closing the front door behind her, she got a call on her mobile phone. It was the vet, and something seemed to be seriously wrong. "Listen carefully," he said in an urgent tone. "You need to get out of the house right now. Go to your neighbor's place and wait there for the police to arrive. I've already called them. Go now." Shocked and frightened, the woman wasted no time and ran straight out the front door. A few minutes later, a police car arrived with its sirens blaring. The policeman got out and explained that they had to search the house. They entered through the front door with their guns drawn. The woman was speechless. She had no idea what was happening. She called the vet and asked him what was going on. "I managed to clear the obstruction in your dog's throat," he said. "When I found out what he was choking on, I called the police. Your dog was choking on 3 human fingers." After the police searched the place, they found a masked man in the woman's bedroom closet. He was armed with a knife and cowering in pain, clutching his right hand. The dog had bitten off 3 of his fingers. It has been reported that some victims of torture during the act would retreat into a world of fantasy from which they could not wake up. In this catatonic state, the victim lived in a world just like their normal one, except they weren't being tortured. The mind of the victim would often try to wake up the victim by leaving hints around the victim's world to help them realize they were asleep. Sometimes, even after the victim knew what was going on, they would still refuse to please wake up. In Korea, when a patient is taken to the hospital, a white wristband is placed on their left arm. These wristbands contain the patient's name and information. When a patient dies, a red wristband is placed on their right arm and they are taken to the morgue. In one particular Korean hospital, a young doctor was working the night shift. It was around 2 a.m. when he finished his last operation. He was on the 5th floor and pressed the button for the elevator. The doctor was tired after a long day and was looking forward to the end of his shift. At 2 a.m., the hospital was very quiet. Most of the patients were asleep, and many of the nurses had already gone home. He entered the elevator and there was just one other person there. He casually chatted with the woman while the elevator descended. The elevator stopped at the basement and the door opened. They saw an old man dressed in a white gown standing there. The old man was about to get in when the doctor suddenly slammed the close button and punched the button for the 5th floor. "Why'd you do that?" asked the astonished woman. "I've performed a lot of operations today," replied the doctor. "I've seen a lot of people die. When a patient dies, they get a red wristband placed on their arm." The woman was silent. "You saw it, didn't you?" said the doctor. That old man had a red wristband on his arm." "A red wristband," said the woman as she raised her right arm. "You mean like this one?" "I'm a scientist. For years, I've been working on a chemical that turns water into alcohol. I think it's going to make me rich. All you do is put 1 drop of this chemical in a glass of water and it will instantly be transformed into pure alcohol. It works on tap water, well water, rainwater, anything that contains water. I think I've perfected it. Now all that remains is to see how it tastes. Let me take a sip. Tastes good. Exactly like alcohol. No one could tell the difference. My little bunyips, that is all from Mr. Villyn today. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps tell YouTube that you're liking my content and want to see more of it. Clicking the notification bell will keep you up to date with my videos and notify you whenever I upload. You can also dislike the video if you want, but doing that might be hazardous to your health. There was a married couple who had 3 daughters. The oldest was 15, the middle one was 12, and the youngest was 7 years old. For Christmas, the oldest daughter asked for a laptop, the middle daughter asked for an iPad, and the youngest daughter asked for a small doll. On Christmas Day, they all unwrapped their presents beneath the Christmas tree. The oldest and middle daughters received what they had asked for, but the youngest daughter was surprised to receive a clown puppet. However, the clown puppet was so cute that she decided to keep it. 2 days later, the youngest girl disappeared. The next Christmas, the oldest daughter asked for an iPad, and the middle daughter asked for a clown puppet in memory of her little sister. 2 days later, the middle daughter disappeared. The next Christmas, the last remaining daughter asked for a clown puppet in memory of her younger sisters. 2 days later, she too disappeared. The parents became very poor and were forced to sell their furniture for money. One day they went to the attic, looking for something else they could sell. There, in a dark recess, they saw the clown puppet. It was sitting on a throne made from lollipop sticks. Arranged all around it were the severed heads of the 3 missing girls. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. Daddy's in the car. Mummy goes out on Saturday nights and leaves me and Daddy home alone. After dinner, Daddy tells me to get into the car. Then we go and get ice cream at the mall. I had to sit in the back seat. Daddy says I can't fit in the front until I'm older. Today I went into the kitchen to see what Daddy was cooking for dinner. He wasn't there. I saw a note on the fridge that said Mummy was going somewhere. I went to find Daddy. I found him in the garage. Daddy was sitting in the car and the engine was turned on. We must be going for ice cream. I got into the back seat. Are we going for ice cream? I asked. Daddy didn't say anything. I feel sleepy. I think I'll take a nap. Housewives. A while ago I was riding my bike around town and I stopped outside a shopping centre. There were 2 housewives standing outside talking and I overheard their conversation. Housewife A: did you hear about the house that burnt down last night? Housewife B: yes. A woman died in the fire. I wonder how it started. Housewife A: it was arson. Housewife B: well, that's scary. I'm worried, aren't you? Housewife A: did the police know who did it? Housewife B: I don't think so. That's all I heard before I got the creeps and cycled away. My little bunyips, that is all from Mr. Villyn today. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps tell YouTube that you're liking my content and want to see more of it. Clicking the notification bell will keep you up to date with my videos and notify you whenever I upload. You can also dislike the video if you want, but doing that might be hazardous to your health. There was a young girl who lived in Texas. She was excited because it was the night of the high school dance. She had brought a brand new dress for the occasion, and she was sure she was going to look beautiful in it. She wanted the dance to be the best evening of her young life. Then her mother came in the house, looking pale and determined. "You are not going to that dance," her mother said. "But why?" the girl asked her mother. "I've just been talking to the preacher. He says the dance is going to be for the devil. You are absolutely forbidden to go," her mother said. The girl nodded as if she accepted her mother's words, but she was determined to go to the dance. As soon as her mother was busy, she put on her brand new dress, snuck out of the house, and hurried to her high school. As soon as she walked into the ballroom, all of the young men turned to look at her. She was startled by all the attention. Normally, no one noticed her. Her mother sometimes accused her of being too awkward to get a boyfriend, but she was not awkward that night. The boys in her class were fighting with each other to dance with her. Later, she broke away from the crowd and went to the table to get some punch to drink. She heard a sudden hush. The music stopped. When she turned around, she saw a handsome young man with jet black hair standing next to her. He looked striking, with his jet black hair slicked back from his forehead and an expensive suit. "Will you dance with me?" he said. The girl managed to stammer a yes, completely stunned by this gorgeous man. He led her on the dance floor. The music sprang up once again. She found herself dancing better than she had danced before. They were the center of attention. Then the man spun her around and around. She gasped for breath, trying to step out of the spin, but he spun her faster and faster. Her feet felt hot. The floor seemed to melt under her. When she looked down, she noticed that the young man wasn't wearing any shoes, and instead of feet, he had black hooves. He spun her even faster. She was spinning so fast that a cloud of dust flew up around them both, so that they were hidden from the crowd. When the dust settled, the girl was gone. The man in black bowed once to the crowd and disappeared. The devil had come to his party, and he had spun the girl all the way to hell. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. Last Halloween, I was waiting at my front door giving out Halloween candy to trick-or-treaters all evening. Some children came alone, some were accompanied by parents. When they held out their bags, I happily dropped the sweets and treats inside. As it grew dark, things started to die down. When it seemed like nobody else was going to come, I decided to call it a night. I was just about to turn my porch light off and go to bed when there was a knock at my door. It seemed much too late for children to still be out, but I grabbed a handful of candy and opened my door. There were two children standing on my porch, but they weren't wearing costumes. They were the strangest children I had ever seen in my life. Their skin was waxy and ghostly white. Their eyes were completely black. Their teeth were jagged and too big to fit in their mouth. The entire look was more disturbing than anything I had ever seen before. But the clothes were just plain, ordinary shirts and pants. Confused, I asked them, "What are you supposed to be? Some kind of monsters?" "No," said the children, as their mouths widened into broad, leering grins. "Tonight we're dressed as humans." Filled suddenly with a chilling sense of impending doom, I slammed the door and locked it tight. Through the peephole, I could see the two strange trick-or-treaters standing outside the door, motionless. Then they began pounding on the door and telling me to let them in. The door shook and seemed like it was about to fall off its hinges. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. When I looked out through the peephole, they were gone. The street outside was deserted. I don't know about you, but this Halloween, I won't be opening the door for anyone. Hanako. The ghost in the toilet almost archived the status of a national phenomena in Japanese legend 20 years ago, when a wave of stories of ghost sightings swept through the nation's schoolyards. Every child had a Hanako story to tell. The stories, of course, are many and varied by every schoolchild in Japan. At one time or another, has stood in dread and anticipation as he or she ventured into the school toilet alone. This is similar to the legend of Kashima Riko, a female ghost without legs, who also lives in school bathrooms. She calls out, "Where are my legs?" when people enter the bathroom. The correct way to answer her varies. In one version, you must say, Kashima Riko, Ka equals Kami, mask, Shi equals Shinin, dead person, Ma equals Ma, demon. Yet another version features Ayo Manto or Akamanto, a male ghost who waits in the last stall in the girls' bathroom. Anyone entering the bathroom hears a voice asking, "Which do you prefer, the red paper or the blue paper?" If they pick red, he kills them by slashing their back or neck repeatedly with a blade to make them look like they're wearing a red cape. If they pick blue, then they're killed by hanging. He's known as Akamanto, Ayomanto, Ayohanti, Akakami, and Ayokami, or Red Cloak. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. There was a young man who was going to college. He went to Las Vegas with his buddies for spring break. They were all having a good time, going from bar to bar, and gulping down drink after drink. They stopped at one bar where a band was playing music, and pretty soon, the friends were all laughing, singing, and shouting loudly. The young man had just finished another drink when a beautiful woman came up to him and started chatting. He was surprised and flattered at the same time. The woman seemed to be really attracted to him, so when she invited him to another party, he readily agreed. Leaving his friends in the bar, the young man followed her to an apartment on the outskirts of the city. When they went inside, there was already a party in full swing. They continued to drink and even danced a little. Then the girl began rummaging around in her handbag and took out a small pouch. Inside there were 2 pills. She took one of the pills out and popped it in her mouth. Then with a smile she offered the other to him. Although the young man would usually never do drugs, he decided to try it out, just this once. He thanked her, took the pill and swallowed it. That was the last thing he remembered. The next morning he woke up in an unfamiliar hotel room. Looking around he realized that he was lying completely naked, submerged up to his neck in a bathtub filled with ice. Groggy and disoriented, he frantically tried to remember how he had ended up there. He was confused, scared, and in a lot of pain. That's when he spotted a crumpled note in his hand. It read, "If you don't want to die, call 911. There was a cell phone sitting on a small table beside the bathtub. He picked it up and dialed the number, his fingers numb and clumsy from the ice. When the emergency services operator answered, the young man explained that he didn't know where he was or how he got there, but he was in a lot of pain. When he mentioned the bathtub filled with ice and the note, the operator seemed oddly familiar with his situation. She said, "Sir, can you do the following for me? Slowly and carefully get out of the bath and examine yourself in the mirror." The man grabbed the towel rack and pulled himself up out of the ice. Looking over at the mirror, he saw that there were 2 9-inch slits in his lower back. When he described the injuries, the operator said, "I want you to get back into the bath, sir. The paramedics are on their way. Do not move until they arrive." "What happened to me?" asked the young man nervously. "I don't want you to panic," said the operator, "but last night you were drugged. Someone removed both your kidneys. There's a ring of organ thieves operating in this city. They harvest kidneys and sell them on the black market. They say that the young man is currently in the hospital on a life support machine, awaiting a kidney donor." And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. Picture the scene. You're walking home from school and your path takes you down a deserted city street. Suddenly you hear a faint noise coming from the shadows. You glance over and see a beautiful woman standing there. She has long hair and is wearing a beige trench coat. A surgical mask covers the lower half of her face. In Japan, wearing a surgical mask is not uncommon during flu season to prevent spreading germs. She steps out of the shadows and blocks your path. "Am I beautiful?" she asks. Before you can answer, she tears off her mask, revealing a hideously deformed face. Her huge mouth is sliced from ear to ear and gapes open, revealing rows of sharp teeth and a big, red, disgusting tongue twisting and twirling inside. "Am I beautiful now?" she screams. Terrified, you struggle to answer her. If you say no, she pulls out a huge pair of scissors and kills you immediately, chopping off your head. If you say yes, she takes her scissors and slices your mouth from ear to ear, making you look just like her. If you try to run away, she'll hunt you down and kill you by slicing you in two. The only way to escape from Kuchisaka owner is to give a non-committal answer. If you say, "You look average," or "You look normal," she'll be confused, giving you just enough time to run away. There are many rumors about how she got her terribly deformed mouth. Some say that her slit mouth is the result of plastic surgery that went horribly wrong. Others say that she was injured in a terrible car crash. Some even believe she is an escaped mental patient who was so demented that she cut her own mouth apart. According to one legend, years ago, in Japan, there lived a very beautiful woman who was extremely vain and self-absorbed. Her husband was a very jealous and brutal man, and he became convinced that she was cheating on him. In a fit of rage, he took a sword and slit her mouth from ear to ear, screaming, "Who will think you're beautiful now?" She became a vengeful spirit and began wandering the streets of Japan, wearing a surgical mask to hide her terrible scars. The slit-mouthed woman's reign of terror began in the spring and summer of 1979, when rumors began to spread throughout Japan about sightings of the Kuchisaka Ono hunting down children. The story spread like wildfire and actually created scares in many towns. Police increased their patrol and schools sent teachers to walk students home in groups. In 2004, South Korea was plagued by reports of a red-masked woman who was chasing children. In 2007, a coroner found some old records from the late 1970s about a woman who was chasing little children but was hit by a car and died shortly after. Her mouth was ripped from ear to ear. My little bunyips, that is all from Mr. Villyn today. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps tell YouTube that you're liking my content and want to see more of it. Clicking the notification bell will keep you up to date with my videos and notify you whenever I upload. You can also dislike the video if you want, but doing that might be hazardous to your health. I grew up in a very small town in Montana, and during the summer, my brother and I would sometimes sell lemonade by the side of the road. We didn't make a lot of money, but we did have fun selling the lemonade to people who were passing by. One hot afternoon, my brother and I were standing at our lemonade stand when we noticed an old rusty car pass by us 2 or 3 times. At the time, it struck me as a little creepy. Eventually the car slowed down and stopped right in front of the stand. There was a woman in the passenger seat, and as she rolled down her window, I saw she was really skinny, with grey hair that was stained a sickly yellow hue from too much smoking. I couldn't see the man who was driving very well because he never looked at me and just stared straight ahead. Both of them seemed very odd, and their clothes were old and dirty. "You boys out here selling lemonade all by yourselves?" croaked the woman. "Yeah, my mum lets us," I replied. "Is your mum home?" she asked. "Yeah, she's in the house," I said. The woman turned and looked at the man who was driving. He nodded, still staring ahead. The woman turned back to me and said, "Okay, I'll have a lemonade." "That'll be 25 cents, I said as I poured her a glass. She rummaged around in her purse, and I could hear coins clinking. Then she pulled out a $5 bill and handed it out to me. A chill went down my spine. Why was she handing me a $5 bill if she had coins in her purse? Something just didn't feel right. "I don't have any change," I lied. "You can keep the change," she croaked. "Just come and take it." Something felt very wrong, but $5 is a lot of money to a kid. I walked up to the car and reached out to take the $5 from her hand. As soon as my fingers touched it, the woman suddenly grabbed me by the wrist and began pulling me into the car. I screamed my lungs out and my brother ran to the house, yelling for help. The man floored the accelerator and the car lurched forward. I fought with all my might and managed to wrench myself free from her grasp. The car stopped and the man got out, but I was already running for my life. My brother was pounding on the door and screaming. My mother rushed out and I turned just in time to see the rusty old car speeding away. We told my mum what had happened and she called the police. When my brother and I calmed down, I went back to the lemonade stand. There was a $5 bill lying on the ground. We packed up the lemonade stand and put it away for good. My little bunyips, that is all from Mr. Villyn today. Liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps tell YouTube that you're liking my content and want to see more of it. Clicking the notification bell will keep you up to date with my videos and notify you whenever I upload. You can also dislike the video if you want, but doing that might be hazardous to your health. I witnessed a horrible accident today. I wanted to cross the street and was waiting for the lights to turn green when a man bumped into me. He didn't even say sorry. I was about to give him a piece of my mind and tell him to watch where he was going, but then I noticed he had a cane. He didn't seem elderly. There must have been something wrong with his legs. Just then my phone started ringing. The high-pitched ringtone is really annoying. Before I could answer it, there was a screech of tires and a dull thud. The man who bumped into me was lying in the middle of the street, in a pool of blood. His sunglasses were lying nearby, cracked and broken. The driver got out and yelled. He just jumped out right in front of me. The driver thought it was a suicide, but I think the man was just clumsy and didn't look where he was going. It was his own fault. He should have been more careful. I live alone and there's not much to do in the evenings. To avoid being bored, I look up a new hobby, putting together jigsaw puzzles. I'm working on a luminous jigsaw puzzle right now. The other night when I came home, the puzzle was glowing faintly in the dark. There's something eerie about that pale, ephemeral glow. It gave me the creeps. When I finish this one, I think I'll go back to doing normal jigsaw puzzles. The snake woman haunts the shoreline and preys on unsuspecting swimmers and fishermen. When she spots her prey, she rises from the water and paralyzes her victim with her eyes. She then uses her long, snake-like tongue to suck all the blood out of her victim's body. Despite her incredible length, Nura Ona can hide in deceptively shallow pools of water. She has ever been known to use her beautiful face and hair to lure swimmers to their deaths. She bobs her head on the surface of the water and flaps her arms, pretending to be a drowning woman. When someone dives in to save her, she rises up, snatches them with her claws and drags them down to the murky depths. Once she has you in her sights, it is difficult to escape the grasp of the snake woman. She can suddenly spring great distances to grab you, so the best way to protect yourself against her is to avoid walking alone on the beach at night. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. One day, a boy was digging in his garden when he saw a big toe sticking out of the ground. He tried to pick it up, but it was stuck. It wouldn't budge, so he pulled as hard as he could, and it came off in his hands. Then he heard something groan and scamper away. The boy took the big toe into the kitchen and showed it to his mother. "That looks like a nice piece of meat," she said. "I'll put it in the soup and we'll have it for dinner." That night, at the dinner table, the boy's father scooped the big toe out of the soup and chopped it up into 3 pieces. The father, the mother, and the boy each ate a piece. Then they did the dishes, and when it got dark, they went to bed. The boy fell asleep almost at once, but in the middle of the night, he was rudely awakened by a strange sound. He listened closely. It sounded like there was a voice coming from outside his window, and it was calling him. "Where is my big toe?" it groaned. When the boy heard that, he got very scared, but he thought, "It doesn't know where I am. It will never find me." Then he heard the voice once more, only now it was closer. "Where is my big toe?" it groaned. The boy pulled the blankets over his head and closed his eyes. "I'll go to sleep," he thought. "When I wake up, it'll be gone." But soon he heard the back door open, and again he heard the voice. "Where is my big toe?" it groaned. Then the boy heard footsteps move through the kitchen, into the dining room, into the living room, into the front hall. They slowly climbed the stairs. Closer and closer they came. Soon they were in the upstairs hall. Now they were outside his door. "Where is my big toe?" the voice groaned. The boy watched in horror as his bedroom door opened. Shaking with fear, he threw his blanket over his head and listened as the footsteps slowly moved through the dark towards the bed. Then they stopped. "Where is my big toe?" the voice groaned. "You've got it." And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. Yesterday, I went to the library to borrow some books. I asked the librarian where the horror section was, and she directed me to some shelves that were in the corner against the wall. I was browsing through the titles when I came to a gap in the books and a cute girl peering through at me from the other side. Our eyes met for a moment and she smiled. I spent 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to start a conversation with her, but in the end I just picked out 3 books and brought them over to the librarian's counter. Why am I such a wuss? If I'd been brave enough to talk to that girl, I could have maybe got her number. According to legend, every Halloween a strange and grotesque old lady roams the streets, preying on children who are trick-or-treating alone. Some call her the Leg Woman, and others refer to her as the Leg Monger. One boy was on his way home when he heard a rustling in the bushes next to him. An old woman with stringy black hair and a hideous wrinkled face emerged from the undergrowth. The boy was startled to see that she was holding a severed leg in her hands, waving it in his face. "Do you want a leg?" she cried. "Do you want a leg?" The boy assumed it was just a Halloween prop, but the woman was so disturbing that he began backing away from her. She persisted, asking him over and over if he wanted a leg. Finally the boy said, "No, I don't want a leg." A group of adults and children who were nearby heard a horrible scream ringing out in the dark streets. They rushed around a corner and got the shock of their lives when they discovered a young boy lying on the ground in a pool of blood. His right leg had been completely ripped off at the hip. If you meet the Leg Woman on Halloween night, be careful. She'll come up to you and ask, "Do you want a leg?" If you answer no, she will tear off your leg and disappear. If you answer yes, she'll grab you and try to attach the severed leg she is carrying to your body. The correct answer is, "I want both my legs." I haven't left my apartment in months. The days go on and nothing changes. Nothing ever happens. Every day is the same as the next. It's monotonous. There's only one thing that keeps me sane. It's the friendly little kid who lives next door. Sometimes she comes over to play with me. Her mother came home early from work today, so I told her to leave. I listened at my door and overheard their conversation. "Where were you?" her mother asked. "I was playing with the man who lives next door," the girl replied. "I told you not to tell lies," her mother snapped. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. There was an old lady who had been living alone ever since her husband died. She was very lonely and her children rarely visited. After a long time away, her oldest daughter came back to live with her. One day they were watching TV in the living room when the news came on. There was a story about a woman who had been arrested for attempting to strangle her mother. "Such a stupid thing to do," the old lady said. "Yes," her daughter agreed. Strangling her mother was a stupid thing to do. A married couple lived in a small house in Japan with their son and daughter. The son was very angry with his sister and wanted to play a really nasty prank on her. He decided that he would secretly videotape her in the bathroom and then post the video online. He wanted to humiliate his sister in front of her friends. The boy hid a camera under a towel in the bathroom. Minutes later, his sister went to the bathroom and locked the door behind her. She never came out again. Her mother started to wonder what was taking her daughter so long. She banged on the bathroom door and called out the girl's name, but got no reply. Worried, she told her husband, and eventually, they managed to force the door open. What they found inside the bathroom filled them with horror. Their daughter was lying in a pool of blood on the tiled floor. She had been stabbed to death. Her face was so sliced up that she was unrecognizable, and her tongue had been cut off. There was a bloody sickle lying on the floor beside her. The police were called immediately and they came to investigate the scene. Inspecting the bathroom, they found that it posed a mystery. The door had been locked from the inside. The window was securely latched and the bathroom was so small that nobody could have been hiding inside, lying in wait for the girl. So how was she murdered? The police saw that the only entrance was a small vent in the wall that measured only 10 inches by 10 inches. Nobody could fit through such a small space. The police were absolutely stumped. They could not figure out how anyone would have gotten inside to kill the girl. The police carefully dusted the sickle for fingerprints, but unfortunately, they found none. At this point, they felt that the case would never be solved. They questioned the mother and father, but when it came time to question the son, he was nowhere to be found. They searched the house and eventually found him curled up in a wardrobe. His eyes were wild and he was sobbing uncontrollably. His hands were shaking violently. They noticed that he was holding a video camera. Unable to question him, the police decided to review the videotape. What they saw in the footage would terrify them for years to come. They pressed play on the video camera, and the screen showed the young girl in the bathroom. When she finished, the police noticed some movement in the small vent behind the toilet. A tiny figure emerged noiselessly from the vent. It was carrying a sickle. The policemen could hardly believe what they were seeing. The figure measured up to 6 inches in height. It jumped onto the girl's back, and before she had a chance to scream, it sliced open her throat with the sickle. Then it began stabbing the girl until she was dead. But the horror was not over. The tiny figure sliced up the girl's face and cut out her tongue. Afterwards, the figure approached the video camera. The figure's face was that of a gnarled and wrinkled old woman. It looked directly into the lens and hissed, "You're next." Then the tiny figure disappeared back through the small vent, carrying the girl's severed tongue. After watching the videotape, the police officers wiped tears from their eyes. Some vomited on the floor, and one even lost control, pooped his pants out of sheer terror. Today the case is unsolved and the tiny woman has never been identified. The videotape still exists, but the police refuse to release it to the public. It sits in an evidence locker at the police station. The police call this case the Sickle Mystery and refuse to discuss it with the media. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. There were two young boys named Trevor and Will. They spent most of their summer vacation hanging around town, looking for things to do. One hot August night, the boys were sitting on a fence by the main road. There was a cornfield just across the road. Trevor spotted something in the field. In the darkness, it was difficult to make out, but he thought it looked like some kind of weird animal. He nudged his friend and pointed in the direction of the strange looking figure. Will said he could see it too. He wasn't sure, but the mysterious thing seemed vaguely human. The next thing they knew, the thing was gone. The boys craned their necks and scanned the field with their eyes. Out of the blackness came the thing. It slowly walked over to the edge of the field before disappearing again. Trevor and Will looked at each other, puzzled. "What was that?" asked Will. "I have no idea," replied Trevor. No sooner had he said that than Trevor felt a clammy hand on his shoulder. He turned around and found himself staring directly into the hideous face of the thing. He let out a yell of terror and surprise. The rotting flesh on the thing's face was coming off in places, revealing the bone underneath. For a moment, it just stared silently at Trevor, with its dark, sunken eyes. Then it suddenly grabbed a hold of his hand. Trevor felt its fingernails dig into his flesh as he wringed out of its grasp. The two boys leapt off the fence and ran down the road, screaming in horror. They didn't stop running until they reached their homes. They tried to tell their parents and friends about the thing they had seen that night, but nobody believed them. When Trevor woke up the next morning, the scratches on his arm were still there. After a few days, they got worse and worse. Trevor got sick and his parents took him to see a doctor. After examining his arm, the doctor told the boy it was infected and gave him some pills to take. Unfortunately, Trevor's condition got worse and worse. The infection spread to his entire arm, and it wasn't long before his flesh was rotting and falling off. He was taken to hospital, but no matter what the doctors did, no treatment seemed to work. The infection spread through his body. Trevor was confined to bed and started to waste away. It seemed like he was beyond help, and as the days went by, he steadily grew worse and worse. His anguished parents could only sit at his bedside and cry as they watched their beloved son slowly rotting away before their eyes. On the day that Trevor finally passed away, Will came to the hospital to visit him. When the boy walked into the hospital room and saw Trevor lying in bed, he was horrified. His friend looked exactly like the thing. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night. My job means I'm always on a train. I was on the train again today when suddenly a woman appeared in front of me. I can remember her face clearly. It's really depressing. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night.